This person's comment defending nationalism is myopic, anthropocentric, and chronologically confining. Their self-preserving and non-empirical analysis fails to account for the fact that globalization tendencies will result in panmixia within 10,000 years, and human genetic variety will no longer be regionalized, since the effective population size will match the actual population size. The source for this information is on page 395 of a 2002 book named Where Do We Come From? The Molecular Evidence for Human Descent by Klein, Taka-hata, and Nao-yuki. My statements on homozygosity still stand true. Anthropologists and molecular biologists from UC Davis, the University of Missouri, Duke University, Brown University, and the University of Nambia have found that the custom of marrying only within the limits of a local community, clan, or tribe causes homozygosity. The aforementioned researchers investigated the impact of runs of homozygosity on fitness in a natural fertility community in northern Namibia. As the homozygous percentage of the genome rises, female fertility declines considerably due to multi-locus genetic influence on fitness caused by the expression of detrimental recessive genes. This information can be weaponized based on research from Tsinghua University in China and Biotechnological Medica y Farmacéutica in Guadalajara, Mexico. By combining a specific CRISPR-Cas9 protein variant with a modified single-gene ribonucleic acid, the researchers were able to significantly enhance the efficiency of generating homozygous edits. This can be combined with research on airborne adeno-associated viruses that can facilitate access through the olfactory bulb, which can be coupled to nucleic acids with a single-strand oligodeoxyribonucleic acid and edit the genes by going through the blood-brain barrier. This would accelerate infertility rates within a particular nationalistic population. Allopatric speciation will inevitably occur within 2 million years, and you must understand that Homo sapiens are a temporary and transitionary species. My source for this information comes from the Department of Genetics at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. The process by which the continents shift from their current position to Pangea Ultima isn't a static process. From an anthropocentric and chronologically limiting standpoint, one can analyze the Shanxi earthquake in 1556 or the Haiti earthquake in 2010. There will be many earthquakes along the way to disrupt any nationalist plans. According to researchers at the Department of Paleobiology in Washington, D.C., the Permian Triassic extinction eliminated 95% of all species on Earth, and this was caused by a combination of volcanic activity related to the Siberian traps and significant continental drift, which led to massive climate change, oceanic disruption, and habitat loss. Further neurological data illustrates that nationalists are willing to preserve their temporary self-preservation and hedonism at the expense of the human race being able to evolve beyond their current physical and mental limitations with the application of CRISPR-Cas9, optogenetics, brain-machine interfaces, nanorobots, cybernetics, and biomimetics. Tohoku University in Sendai, Japan, used an fMRI to find that nationalism and patriotism both involve so-called positive feelings towards one's own nation. Nationalism includes irrationally devaluing other nations, while patriotism does not involve such comparisons, yet it is still harmful to the evolutionary optimization algorithm of empiricism. The aforementioned researchers found that higher nationalism correlated with increased gray matter density in the posterior cingulate cortex and the orbital frontal cortex, and similar gray matter density in the right amygdala area of the brain. Higher patriotism correlated with smaller gray matter density in the rostrolateral prefrontal cortex. In this context, the posterior cingulate cortex is associated with so-called compassion. The orbital frontal cortex is associated with feelings of superiority. The right amygdala is associated with fear and defensive aggression. The rostrolateral prefrontal cortex is associated with so-called goal-directed reward learning. Research from Biotechnological Medica y Farmacéutica in Guadalajara, Mexico, could be used to deal with irrational and self-serving nationalists by using an airborne adeno-associated virus that can package the sequence of a CRISPR-Cas9 virus and a single guide RNA in a caspid. that can be infused directly into the posterior cingulate cortex, orbital frontal cortex, amygdala, rostrolateral prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, and the insula. We will accelerate our extinction if nationalist behavior, blind empathy, and beliefs emerging from the posterior cingulate cortex, orbital frontal cortex, amygdala, rostrolateral prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, and insula supersede our abilities in object handling, contemplation of distance, spatial reasoning, arithmetic processing, and language processing that emerges from the inferior frontal gyri, supramarginal gyri, posterior parietal cortex, intraparietal sulcus, angular gyri, and middle temporal gyrus. Cyanobacteria, Charnia, Cyclomedusa, Opabina, trilobites, Tiktaalik, Dimetrodon, the T-Rex, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and Neanderthals weren't the pinnacle of evolutionary biology when it comes to intelligence, and neither are current Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens are a temporary and transitionary species that will fade into eternal oblivion if we do not evolve beyond our current physical and mental limitations with the application of CRISPR-Cas9, optogenetics, brain-machine interfaces, nanorobots, cybernetics, and biomimetics. Rather than focusing on a temporary race or species that behaves primarily based on defensive aggression, fear, emotional bonding, fear conditioning, emotional responses to pain, and a negative hedonic reaction to rejected non-inferential and non-empirical beliefs, we need to be more focused on research from physicists.